Framework fatigue, the real reason developers get angry about new tech. Type 1 in the chat if you get angry about new tech. Just new tech in general, because obviously that's a fairly broad statement. I don't really actually get upset about new tech. I think the only thing that I really get upset about, generally speaking, is just like a new iteration on the same tech. A good example would be if you go to Golang HTTP servers, right? There's so many different ones. There's HTTP Net, which has had a lot of improvements. There's Echo, right? There's Echo, which is like a high performance one. What are all the other ones? There's Gin, right? There's Gin. There's a whole bunch of different ones. And like for me, at some point I get like a little annoyed by it. Gorilla, but I think Gorilla has been done that fast. HTTP, Fiber, that's right. Fiber was the one I was thinking of. There's like a whole bunch of these. And at some point, like for me, the things that get frustrating is when a new thing drops, not for any other supposed reason other than speed. Like they're like, oh, this is a new faster version. And you're just like, but what does it like? What changed or what needed to actually change, right? And if there's nothing that's actually changed about the fundamental tech, it's just like, what exactly are we bringing to the table? It kind of feels like there's nothing that's brought to the table other than somebody's new version of the product. Now, I do want to be completely fair, though. If you look at this, what did I just do this weekend? There are like 5 different versions of WebSockets. I did build my own. First off, just to be completely fair, the WebSockets for the other NeoVim ones, the 3 that I tried, all 3 of them just had like actual just straight up Lua or NeoVim errors, so I didn't use it. One of them relied on Rust, but only built it for Mac OS and would distribute the binary with it, so I didn't want to have to go and build my own Tungstenite and then actually figure out whatever they did and do all that. And since I only need very little of the actual WebSocket protocol, text, ping, and pong, I said, okay, I could build that pretty straightforward. This is not a hard thing to build. I can do this. You know what? It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. So I spent 4 hours and threw it together, and now it works. And I can receive messages into NeoVim. And guess what? Here's the deal, though. I'm not going to release it. This is just for me. This is just mine. We don't need yet another WebSocket library out there. I'm not providing anything amazing. The only reason why I would let it out there is if I truly can't find a WebSocket protocol that actually works, right? I don't want to spend 6 hours debugging your WebSocket when I could build mine in 2 hours or 3 hours, right? That's kind of silly. And you know what's even better these days? That's one thing that actually makes LLM super useful, because I'm like, hey, I know it's RFC 6445 or 6554, whatever it is for WebSockets. Hey, what's the opcode for text? Ping and pong. Bam, bam, bam. Easy peasy. Okay. Which is the finish bit? Hey, which is the length byte? Okay. Bing, bing, bing. Right? Becomes super nice. And so it's like, that was actually really nice to do it, because last time I had to read the whole RFC and kind of go through every last little bit. But this one, I didn't have to do any of that. I could just go bing, 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 right? Super easy. Absolutely loved it. Publicizing it does no harm. Just don't maintain it. If anyone complains, they can get the F out. Yeah, I just don't know if I want to publicize it. I don't know if we need yet another thing out there. And because that's like my whole upsetness, is that I think one thing that's causing people to be upset about new tech is that it's just a constant, nonstop drum of new tech that doesn't actually add anything, right? Like the difference between React and Solid are very, very different. The difference between React, Solid, and Svelte are very, very different. The difference between React, Angular, Svelte, Solid, Vue are very, very different, but they're also very, very same. Like it's just like this constant like just a new perspective on the same thing is just kind of wild that we're still in this, and that there's probably going to be a new one. How much do you want to bet within 2025 there will be a new UI framework? Like, I'm almost completely convinced of it. If you look at it, there's almost been one every 2 years. It's crazy. All right, for a while, it felt like every day a new JavaScript framework was announced, from Svelte stealing React's thunder to Solid promising revolutionary performance and Quick reimagined how web apps load. Quick is just React plus sending stuff down, right? All of these promises to be blazingly fast and better than anything else that came before it. I think Quick's big downfall came with the fact that it didn't actually do anything revolutionary, and it's not that it wasn't amazing. It's not that what they built wasn't amazing tech. But just sending down the JavaScript when you need it isn't necessarily amazing tech. Because what's the problem you're trying to avoid? You're trying to avoid the fact that you're using a whole bunch of JavaScript. By using a whole bunch of JavaScript and dictating that your server has to be written in JavaScript. I'm not sure if I really buy that. Like, I think fundamentally I still had just like the whole problem was I don't I don't think you actually got away from anything. You still have to send down React. You still have to send down all your dependencies. You're just sending them down when somebody uses them. And if you have a really big dependency and when someone uses it, if you don't have it aligned right, you could have in-app spinners. There's like, it just adds a whole bunch of stuff and complication. And I foresee the same stuff happening with server-side rendering, right? Isn't server-side rendering potentially going to be a lot of the same stuff? Like the reality is that most apps you can write with very little amount of code. And I know people hate that. And most people's apps, you're not like Facebook big, right? You don't have 1,000 engineers working on the UI/middle layer/backend. That's not you. And so do you always need to reach for the biggest hammer? I'm sure there's good reasons to reach for the hammer. By the way, I'm not trying to dunk on frameworks. I hope people understand that. That what I want people to understand is that frameworks aren't the default solution. Frameworks are a solution that you've been handed that has been optimized for a bunch of people to work in. It is the enterprise solution to a problem of building a UI. And so when everyone uses that as the default, they think that that is the only way to build an app. It's not the only way or potentially even the best way. It's just the way that you have started off. And this is really to my younger people, right? The people that have like 10, 20 years of experience, everyone understands immediately what I'm talking about. The people that don't have that are just like, oh, wait, what? There's other things? Like, it's shocking. Here, just to kind of put this into perspective, how many people right now do not even realize that JSON isn't the only way to communicate back and forth between servers? Press 1 in the chat. It's okay. I'm not dunking on you. You're just new. There will be plenty of people that will actually type 1 that there are other ways people communicate other than JSON. Of course this happens. Like, of course, like this just goes to show that it takes a while to understand these things. And it's not like a bad thing, right? I actually don't think it's bad that you don't know that. And here's the best part. How many people think that it's XML or JSON and that's the trade-off we're making? There's a lot of people that think it's XML and versus JSON. And that's okay, again, right? They don't even know about protobufs, Captain Proto, writing your own like C flat structure stuff. There's like all sorts of stuff has been happening. HTTP 2, right? I was just saying that like that thing's a binary protocol that you put JSON on top of. Anyways, it's just more about like your understanding or the availability of these things. All right, as a developer trying to keep up with the latest tech, you'll find yourself in familiar loop. Check the landing page, watch the demo, start the GitHub repo just in case, and move on with your life. There's really not much mental bandwidth to go around. Yeah, I mean, why even start the repo? Honestly, why start the repo? Why even care? Why even check into new tech if you don't have the time to go around and play with it, or you're not generally interested, right? Like if you're just interested in seeing new things, I think actually new tech can be really difficult for new people because new people don't even have the fundamental grasp. If anything, I would highly recommend if you're like 3 years or less into this, or even if you've never done it, go, I don't get any money from this, but I do get 30% off for this book if you use my name. I get $0. Go here. Go do this. Do this. You'll be really happy. You will leave here with more understanding and more expertise and more longevity and more impact on your career than you will learning another UI framework. All right. Or maybe you just react differently. Maybe you feel offended to the bone that this new generation of developers is just running in circles, reinventing what PHP and JSP could do 15 years ago. You go on Hacker News and rant about a framework of the day and how everyone is wasting your time. I think it's great. Invent your own framework. But I mean, he's technically not wrong that there is like PHP solved most of these problems that are just server components is just re-envisioning PHP with a slight, like with barely a change. Critics aren't baseless. Each new framework adds complexity to the ecosystem. Bundle sizes grows, build tools multiply, and the learning curves get steeper. The JavaScript community's tendency to reinvent rather than refine existing solutions has a real cost, but technical arguments only tell part of the story. Why do these discussions get so heated? Why do framework fatigue trigger such visceral reactions? Also, I do want to throw out there that one thing that I really dislike about the JavaScript build community is that you really have absolutely no idea how any of this stuff works. And it's an interpreted stuff. A lot of people just, they do the default, and then when they have to go really build something, like they're building out the universe, right? If you go to any company of any sizable amount of employees and they have a build system, dude, there's like a full-time or 2 full-time or 3 full-time, full-ass people building just something to build JavaScript. It's crazy. Like once you get to the bigger stuff, it's just because it's just such a mess. It's absolutely wild. What was the discount on the book? Let's find out. Remember Gulp? Let's see. Use code Primeagen for 30% off. There you go. It must be on the ebook only, right? Anyways, how dare you make me learn something new when the old thing was perfectly decent? Probably a top-level comment on Hacker News. Yeah, I never really liked this approach either because, I mean, this is why I'm learning Zig, right? If this was the case, if this truly was it, then we should all be programming C or something even before C, right? But we all inherently know that that's not the case. It has nothing to do with that. I mean, new tech can be very, very helpful. I think Zig has a lot of cool things. I think Jai has a lot of cool things, right? And I want to understand why I should use one or the other. Generally speaking, just kind of like on a side note on that one, I do think that right now my heart tells me that Zig is actually probably a better choice in the sense that it's an open language and there's already pretty big projects. But my head also tells me that Jai has a huge private community that's building a lot of stuff. And once it becomes public, there's going to be a lot of projects using it. And so it's kind of like this back and forth thing that I'm not really sure which one is which. But either way, fun stuff. Okay. After years of observing these cycles, I think it comes down to one word: employability. Developers want to keep getting paid for what they already know and use. We worry that today's optional technology will become tomorrow's job requirement. That fear isn't irrational. Look at the job boards today and count how many React positions you see comparatively to jQuery. Yeah, or, dude, just right now, somebody in this chat type 1 if in the last little bit they've seen jobs with HTMX. I've seen so many people recently talking about how they've been getting asked HTMX in interviews, HTMX in jobs. It's actually kind of wild. I see at least a couple ones, just a couple ones, 4 ones, 5 ones, not a lot. And these are from people I at least moderately trust. And so there is a little bit to it. It's starting to happen. Like, he is right. Employability is a big thing, is that you feel like you need to learn more and more because who knows what's going to happen. And honestly, I would make a different argument here. I wouldn't learn a technology out of irrational fear of where the job market is going to be tomorrow. I would learn a technology and understand which one's really good and why you should use what you should use, and you should lead your employer, the current person employing you, to the technology. You should try to be making your own path as opposed to worried that the path underneath you is going to change. The reality is React isn't going anywhere. You'll be using React. The reality is that 70-some% of websites still have jQuery coming down to it. Trust me, it's not like these things aren't, it takes a long ass time for things to change. You know what I mean? Right? It takes a long time for things to change. It is true that you can still make web page using Notepad, but it would be very hard to get anyone to pay for it. This sentence doesn't make any sense. I don't think using Notepad as a means for your programming, I don't think these two things correlate with each other. A website that no one will pay for and developing a Notepad. I'm sure there's people out there that develop a Notepad because they're psychopaths. I don't know. Reframing the framework discussion from purely technical to employability made all the angry comments make a lot more sense to me. Outrage is a self-defense, but once we understand what we're really defending against, we can have more productive conversations about how our industry evolves. I like the change. I think that people do worry way too much about what's going to happen. I think people learn technologies because they think tomorrow these technologies are going to be popular, and then what they find out is that they learned like Rust, and Rust still like isn't heavily used everywhere. And they're just like, what the heck? I was told that Rust was going to be the best thing. And yeah, there are jobs now. There are more and more jobs. I bet you within the next 5 years, there'll be more Rust jobs than there are now. But that doesn't mean it's going to be just like absolutely banging. And so I think a lot of people do this where they overestimate how intense these things are. Is this a monospaced plain text article? Ew. Is this monospaced? Oh, it is. Yeah. Look at that. Well, lovely. No wonder it was so easy to read and feels just like what I look at all the days. What a lovely thing. Job shouldn't be the reason you learn a new language. So I 99% agree with you, Code Girl, except for this. If you are new and you're trying to find a job and you're looking around, say, your local area or the area you're most likely to get employed, and every one of them uses C#, I would probably just recommend learning C#. Just throwing it out there. That when hot languages in your area, right? There's AKA Boise, right? Like, yeah, if you're in Boise, yeah, okay, fine, true, yeah, and you're just trying to make it, you also got to play your area. Not if you're trying to go for remote jobs, then obviously you try to pick and understand what the remote market is looking for and then probably do something with that. I do not think that using jobs as an indicator for what to learn is a bad thing, right? It's just that Doug loves C#. Oh, yeah, of course Doug loves C#. I heard Doug loves C#. Anyways, very cool article. Awesome. Very nice. I like the inverse of this. Don't let the job lead you to your next tech. You lead your job to the next tech. Don't let your employer dictate how your career is going to go. One of the reasons why I got on the last team that I was on at Netflix is because I made some good suggestions about how to do startup performance. That got me and the boss talking a bunch. Even though I never even implemented anything to do with startup performance. I just started throwing things out there. I had this trailing edge UI idea about only reloading the UI if you need to, but downloading the UI before it's actually even needing to be used, wrote up a whole document, all that kind of stuff, and kind of just said, hey, I think this is where things should go. And then after that, we started talking about rewriting our network stack. And so what did I do? I just immediately, in my off time over Christmas, and even streamed it over the Christmas break. Some people were around when I did that. Definitely Cam and Nightshade Dude. I wrote my WebSocket protocol for the first time ever over Christmas break, and like presented that to my boss. I'm like, here you go. Like this is what I'm doing. Look at that. I'm really, really far. I'm like 85% done. And so that was like my first time. Fantastic, right? And that's how I got onto the team, is that I figured out what they need, what they want, and I tried to outrun my employer and do what I wanted. I effectively led them where I wanted to be, and I was able to get that. Bro, come to my team. Yeah, and then I got to go on that team. All right, anyways, the name is the Primogen.